experiential stuff.
I'm just hoping to ask, what was your grandfather like? Was he a big man?
Okay.
What was he?
Physically, he was a tall man. Yeah, he had quite a, I would say, lion presence, because he was a professor first, and his dad wanted him to do the civil service IAS exam. Then he said, oh, I can't be a bootlicker to the politicians. In those days, there was no corporations. And then he became a high court lawyer. So that was how he earned his money. In those days, you were not thinking of becoming a yoga teacher or a guru. No. But he was very erudite, very well-read. He knew about 7 languages. So he was very immersed. So even his presence, like in the courts, I've gone as a little kid, I feel quite like, protected around him, because he's this really strong, huge person, yeah. Not fat, but yeah, kind of has a presence, yeah. So yeah, thanks for asking. Just brings me back the image. Yes. So some people have to leave, so we'll just do a namaste, and then those who want to stay back, have questions, will go beyond. So we'll just say a namaste to ourselves. Thank you so much for being here. Namaste for bringing ourselves here, making the effort despite the traffic, despite everything you had to kind of go through. Now namaste to everyone else for everyone's beautiful energy and presence. And namaste to the earth and the masters for all their support. So before everyone leaves, just a few practical things. If you wanted to find out about the Thursday community classes, then please ask Ross or Kiana or Tina. And Ross is teaching classes in Gibson, so also those who are on the island, have friends on the island.
Sunshine Coast.
Okay, Sunshine Coast. You can ask him. And then now we'll move on to the question and answer session. And those of you, I know some of you were on the dot. The question and answers, we'll keep it short. And we'll have one more question and then we'll close. Does it feel okay, or?
I'll just so I was just wondering if you would offer some of your thoughts on the proliferation of yoga teacher trainings in the West, and how it's seems to be a little bit changed in terms of the way the public is viewing yoga as, let's say, an exercise, and I'm oversimplifying it.
Yes.
But, for example, my teacher was from India, the person who I originally practiced with, and he was a little bit concerned about this. And he used to remind me often that yoga is not just an exercise, so much more than that, and I think it's potentially problematic. So I was wondering if you could give your thoughts on that.
I think you've already answered it too by how your teacher felt. So yes, a lot of my community in India, they're all very, very concerned. But I'm like, of course you create awareness about what yoga really is. I'm not the one who's going to confront this whole industry and say, oh, you shouldn't be doing it. I'm not that sort of a person. So instead, I create awareness about this beautiful magnitude and the depth of yoga, and those who are really drawn to it will come here. So that's what I'm hoping for. People who really want self-awareness and want true liberation or freedom from that which binds them. So yeah, like I said, everybody in India who's in it from a true tradition shares the same thoughts. And oh my God, and I'm like, oh wow. In one way, of course, I do see a small benefit to it, because Madonna and Sting and all of them are practicing it, it's come one full circle to the yuppie Indian crowd. And all the youngsters want to do it because of that. Earlier it was like, it was a retirement thing, like you go into an ashram after you're like 60 or 50. No, it was. Some Indians who were raised in India will be able to tell you. It was like a very old people thing, but now it's become hip and yuppie. So I would say, yeah, minor benefit.
So there's an aspect of acceptance, not condemning it, if it is that.
Yeah, it is what it is. And like I said, I don't feel what they're teaching is yoga. I tell that to everybody in the teacher training or in the groups that we are. It is yoga exercise, or exercise that resembles yoga postures, because there is no paradigm shift. The approach is completely the exercise approach, which means it is just go, 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 whereas the yogic paradigm is effortless effort and creating those new synapses in the brain, which can happen only when the breath and the mind are immersed in the practice. So the breath has to be that link. So I don't see, any teacher teaching that for the mindfulness. So yes, to me it's not yoga, but I'll say, okay, the word yoga has become famous. So thank you for asking. What is your name? Connor. Thanks, Connor. Sorry.
Question relates to understanding bliss in layman's term. When someone is experiencing it, how to really describe it? This is the state I'm in.
So how to describe, that's why a lot of teachers, when they describe bliss, they say that, oh, you have to eat it to experience it. I can only give you words that are pointers to the experience. So there's not much emphasis on describing it, but more on experiencing it. So I have gone through periods of being completely immersed in it when I was younger, then somehow was jolted out of it because of misalignments and other factions, and almost like coming full circle and saying, oh, consciously now I will realign. So those states when I was younger, I naturally came to me, like I said, because of my grandfather, because of absorbing, because of naturally having out-of-body experiences. I didn't, try and do a practice and come about it, but I knew I was not this physical body. I knew I was this expansive spirit. So I would say, yeah, the focus is more on the experience than rather than trying to convince somebody, oh, this mango is so great, just eat the mango.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking. What is your name?
Yuri.
Yuri. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
So thanks so much for your explanation about all these things and Tantra too. I'm just wondering if you want to learn more about Tantra in a non-Western sort of super sexualized way, where's the best resource to learn about it? A book or maybe somewhere?
So that's why I would say if you see traditionally, they were not very book-centric. It was an oral tradition and you had to study with a teacher. So there was a practice of refinement. For example, if you're eating unhealthy foods, it's a very simple way of replacing unhealthy foods. It might be a very, very simple concept, but it's a tantric concept of not negating the senses, but using the senses in healthy ways. So go for healthy, organic foods on a very simple level. So those kind of shifts will happen in the class apart from these energy practices, where a natural purification will take place. And you can ask many of them who've done not just the teacher training, but who come regularly even for the Thursday evening classes. They find that they can no more do the things that they were doing. Like one of them in India, he came and he's like, oh my God, I can't smoke anymore because now after all the pranayama, I actually feel this smoke going in and how it's impacting me, so I just can't touch a cigarette anymore. So it's almost a natural expression of reconnection, which means you can do the same unhealthy sensory experiences you had before. So I would say more practice. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. What is your name?
Sarah.
Zara. Thanks, Zara.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For the yoga, is that possible that we have for people who has heart trouble?
Yes. So the question is more medical here. Does yoga work for people with heart trouble?
And
Other diseases. So it's more disease-based. Yes. So there is a stream of yoga which is more therapeutics, and you're doing it purely on a physical level, but of course the whole framework is given as well. So a good byproduct, I would say, of doing yoga is that there is a good sympathetic and parasympathetic balance in the nervous system, which means your body is able to relax. Otherwise, we're in this adrenaline-based environment, which is go, go, go. When your adrenaline is high, one, you don't feel pain. You're able to push yourself even though your body is in pain, you're able to go beyond that. And then, of course, your body at some point is going to break down. But when you relax, you're like, oh, I actually feel this area is like, I'm like extremely tired. So when people come and experience a class, it's a very gentle, energy-oriented class. But they say, oh my God, I've been so fatigued, I'm so tired, and what did I do? Just some breathing, and they're like snoring at the end of the class, which is great because because the relaxation is meant for that, to go deeper. So in that, after the practice, when you go into the relaxation response, that is when true healing takes place for any illness, not just heart disease. Now, many of us have not taken our bodies into the relaxation response because of this adrenaline-based, adrenaline-driven society. So just in a nutshell. But of course, there are many, many layers to it. Yeah, thank you. So shall we close? Oh, one last question and shall we close? Yeah, okay.
So I have a question on your thoughts. I kind of oscillate between the beyond good and bad, right? So then that, and then the really wanting to live your dharma, the really wanting to, wake people up and connect with people who are kind of on that, brink or whatever it is.
No, that's a very good question.
And
no, all the questions are good, but this is especially good.
Thank you. And I just struggle so much as like a soul in a human body to see like the perfection in everything, and then the other side where I just want to like do and fix and heal and help.
So yes, that's, I would say, the dance that we're dancing, because sometimes, of course, people take that concept beyond good and bad to an extreme. I'm like, yeah, why don't you drink gasoline then? Like some people who've argued with me and saying, oh, we can eat anything as long as it's offered and it's all transmuted. But we're not on that vibrational state to be taking a concept out of context. So yes, it is true on its highest level, but are all parts of that vibrating on that level, which means our Annamaya Kosha, that is a physical body, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, all of that. That's why we start in the Ashtanga Yoga system with very basics, healthy boundaries. Does this work for me or not? Doesn't mean that the other person is bad or wrong. They're just vibrationally not a match. So if you feel, no, somebody screaming their guts off is not okay for me, then you're okay to, kind of communicate that. I work with a lot of children in India in the slums. And just to give you an instant, this is a classic example of how two teachers who were chaperoning them, we took them on a big picnic. And two teachers came and said, oh, these kids are fighting, and maybe if you come, they'll like have a little fear. So of course I was called, and then I went there from one side of the picnic to the other, and I said, why are you girls fighting? And so she said, no, we're not fighting. Then I said, no, but this teacher said you're screaming at each other. And she said, oh, that's, like we were just, whatever. Like she just looked at me blank, and I said, no. She said, fighting in my term means if I pull somebody's hair and drag them, that's fighting. So they've grown up hearing their moms and dads scream at each other, where that was the normal. A little bit thing, that's the normal. So again, we're all trying to figure out what the normal is for us, and of course have those boundaries according to that. Somebody is not a vibrational match, it's perfectly okay to say, no, this doesn't work for me. But if you're thinking, I have to fix this person and get enmeshed with them, then is where I would say, there's a tug of war that happens. Because maybe the person doesn't see the value in changing. If they do see the value in changing and ask for support and are willing to follow through, then I would say yes. But otherwise, it's, that's why Patanjali beautifully says, if somebody is on a lower vibration, be friendly to the ones, or friendly, have compassion for those who are suffering, but kind of be indifferent or detached from the ones who are not. Otherwise, we'll get pulled into that tug of war. So I guess if you can do it in a detached way, kind of throw light on the fact, whatever the situation is, and say maybe if you shift this, it'll be better, more harmonious. If they don't want harmony, if they don't want a solution, then you just have to step back. Yeah. So, thank you. What is your name?
Linda.
Linda. Okay. I hope that answered the question.
Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know what the situation is, but yeah. And of course, all of us have to step up. If it's a larger thing, fix things. If it's a larger world, I would say stand up, step up. You know, it's all our responsibility to actually stand up and step up. If it's about the earth or nature or things are not right, I would say we all need to voice it. That is very important. If it's an individual, it's a different ballgame. You know? But if it's a greater good, then I would say, yeah, do speak up and don't be afraid to take a little bit space, as we did in the Viryasana. Have that courage, open your chest and say, I'm ready to speak and face the world. On that note, I would say, yes, thank you. Thank you very much for being here. And again, thanks to Jacob and Banyen and this beautiful space in Vancouver and the First Nations people, you know, for having this land. So thank you all for being here.
We also have a makeshift email list because we forgot our email sign-up sheet. So if you want to be on the Arkaya newsletter that gets sent out once a month with different workshops and classes that are happening, you can come up to the front here and put your name down.